Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today we are going to be drawing Huntress. And I think we're going to be talking about posing or something or other and detailing maybe. I've sort of abandoned the concept of topics at this point. It's just more or less a suggestion for the titles really, more than anything else. But we're back to having a lot of background noise. I've been fighting that all day basically. I've been waiting around for quite a while to record now because there's been a number of different noises going on outside. But that's not really your problem. However, if you hear any background noises, such as you are probably hearing right now, not much I can do about it. It's either wait around all day or just get on with it. Anyways, I will roll the intro and then I will show you what I have. So yeah. So yeah, this is where we're at. This is a pretty simple enough pose. But something I will tell you as a little pro tip out there for you perspective artists out there, or anyone who does draw, but maybe not at a professional level or anything like that. A little tip: if you're going to draw a crossbow or anything like this, never ever draw it at this angle, because it is tremendously difficult to convey the shape of the thing. If you want to draw it at more of an angle where it's tilted more away or towards. So that you're seeing the shape of it more obviously, because here this is just, it's very hard to convey what it is from this particular angle. It's just very awkward. I wouldn't recommend doing it this way. There's a million and one easier ways to do it. This is the way I've kind of stuck myself with because of the nature of the entire rest of the pose. I can't really just change it without making sweeping changes to everything else. So it's very annoying. I've made my bed. I kind of have to sleep in it now. Anyways. So yeah. I suppose I'll touch on design stuff first because that's easier to talk about. The design that I've sort of pulled from here is a mixture of her usual normal design and the DC Animated Universe one. Because there's a few elements here which sort of which differ in ways. For example, so something which I'm just going to note now is that there are obviously the white bits, like the stripes, but this area here along the side and into the sort of main core body piece and the boots are actually like a dark purple color. They'll be very dark. They're just, again, they're not black like the shaded areas. Shaded areas are black. The light areas are either white or pink, and the sort of separate unshaded areas are dark purple. So I just sort of did that to separate out the colors because I don't want this to all just sort of blur together into a mesh of black and purple because of how those colors are used here. That's just sort of going to wind up meaning that it'll all blend together if it's not separated out properly. But anyways, in terms of changes I made, again, as I mentioned, it's just sort of a touched up version of the sort of classic costume meets Animated Universe one. Hence why it has the sort of the window at the bottom here. And yeah, so there'll be a bit more pink in this than usually you would see. A lot of the time the pink is not used, and they would instead use just a lighter purple. So we'll see. I might go for that instead. That might be something I prefer as opposed to the pink. We'll see. I'll experiment with it. But yeah, in terms of the pose, I decided to have it be a very rigid sort of pose, of where you can't see the other arm because it's sort of straight or it's back, tucked into the cape. There's a million and one reasons why you can't see the other arm. The simplest explanation is I didn't really want to draw it. But it looks fine without it, so that's the thing. It looks fine without it. It isn't jarring to not have it. It's a pose done in such a way where there's a logical reason why you maybe couldn't see it. Anyways, the other arm is obviously straight out. The cape is sort of tucking up a little bit over that arm, and then it's falling down after the fact. And then the other side of the cape is fluttering out. Because you could maybe say that, oh, the arm has swung up. She sort of swung her arm up like this, and now the whole cape is sort of fluttering back. I think what I decided to do is I decided to have her hair fall a little bit in front of her face, just so that it looks a bit more interesting. I think it looks a bit more interesting than just having the sort of mask uninterrupted, I guess, in that sense. It looks more interesting to have the hair sort of fall down a little bit. But yeah, so other things worth noting. In terms of, yeah, I've talked a little bit about the detailing stuff, talked a little bit about the posing stuff. I think in terms of the background, I'm probably going to do a sort of a stripes thing, of where I might do sort of angular stripes just to sort of separate things out, make it look a little bit more interesting, because the background will probably be dark. So I'll probably do dark background with light stripes against it, so that it's just sort of a little bit more interesting looking. But yeah, other things to note. It's been a little while since I've done one of these, so my brain is sort of failing me at times here. I'm also very tired. So I'm probably going to try and make this one a bit faster. I also didn't turn on my light, which I just realized. It's not that important for right now, but I'm going to do that. Alright, the light is on. It doesn't really do much, it just sort of means that there's not as much of a dark shadow on my face. So, yeah. Anyways. What was I going to say? Yeah, so the sort of little accenting things such as the hair and things like that are all those nice little things. The biggest pain is going to be the gun, because again, as I mentioned, it's at a very awkward angle, and so that just means it's going to make my life a lot harder when it comes to actually drawing it. Again, I don't think there's actually much I really need to cover here. I've made this quite easy for myself for the most part. There's just the little things, I suppose, in terms of the little things which I've just done for myself, such as shading in certain areas and stuff like that, and that's just to make my life a bit easier. Yeah, I could have definitely stood to have made my life easier with that gun, but, well, there's no use complaining about it now. I'm just going to have to make do. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else I really need to cover. I think I'm mostly sort of good to just start, I'd say. Yeah, I kind of covered everything. I sort of feel like maybe there's something I'm forgetting here. But in terms of the pose, it's a very simple pose, it's a very rigid pose. She's sort of just standing with the arm straight. It's fairly simple, it's not too dynamic. It's just sort of, the cape does a lot here to sort of accentuate it. In terms of the design, it's a touched up, slightly different design. The details of it are a little different, but largely with a lot of these superhero designs, I tend to, if I'm going to change them, keep them to very simple changes that maintain a very clean, simple shape. Because that is generally the core of a lot of these designs. Anyways, is simple, clean shapes. Again, the sort of primary design element with Huntress is stripes. Everything is done in stripes. For the most part. Again, I've accentuated that a little bit here, where it's like, obviously you've got the cape stripe that goes along the edge, and you've got the middle stripe that then connects into the front, and then I've made a thicker stripe around that, which then connects into the window at the bottom here, and then that stripe goes down further into the bottom, and there's another stripe at the back, and then the stripes around that link around the arms, and then the stripes that link around the legs, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. There's a lot of stripes going on, is the point. But yeah, so generally I try to keep it to that, and that's what I usually try to do whenever I'm doing any sort of light touch-ups or anything like that to a design. Keep it within the spirit of the design, generally. Make modifications where they make sense. And that is generally, I mean, in terms of design, you don't want to go too overboard. If you're going to do a different design, generally I try to keep it within, as I say, within the spirit of it, within the design conventions that have already been set up, and to sort of keep going with what they've already set forth. But anyways, I think that's enough rambling. I think I will start this, I will do these details, and then I'll be back to do the colours. So yeah. Alright, so that's our details done. I didn't make any huge adjustments. The only like slight change I made really was I made the tail on this part of the cape a bit longer. Made her facial expression slightly different. I widened her eyes a tiny bit. And stuff like that. Like, not really any appreciable changes for the most part. I sort of lowered some of the detail a little bit on a lot of the body, just so that, because again I sort of thought to myself, well, a lot of this is going to be covered by dark colors anyways, so I made it a bit thinner, a bit more subtle, just so that, again, because this stuff is only really going to come out a little bit whenever I'm painting it, so it's not the most important thing in the world. So yeah, we'll see what I do with that later. But it's maybe wishful thinking, but let's hope that the rest of this is a little bit quicker, because that first section there was quite long. So yeah, hopefully I can get the rest of this done a bit quicker. Again, there's not many colors to deal with here. There's the standard colors, your skin, your eyes, hair, all that stuff. But aside from that, there's the grey of the crossbow, there's white, there's the primary purple, there's black, there's the light purple / pink. There's only the 5 colors there, so that's not so bad. This should be reasonably quick, in theory. I also have to do the background, but I know what I'm doing with the background, and it'll be quick and easy anyways, so it might be quick, it might be difficult, who knows? Who knows at this point? I'm just hoping that the rest of these sections are a lot quicker, because I kind of don't really have, I don't have anything to be talking about anyways. This one, I kind of probably should have thought of some stuff to talk about beforehand, because I really actually don't have a huge amount to say. Because I wanted to make this one easy for myself, was mostly it. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, I already mentioned what I'm going to do with the background. I'm just going to do the sort of very simple, the stripes thing. I'm going to do them as diagonal, maybe like 2-3 stripes, something like that in the background, and then just to sort of, just to disperse some of our colors a little bit. Yeah, nothing too crazy. Nothing too crazy, I'd say, with this one. Simple enough. Yeah, is there anything else I need to really cover before I get into things? Because, yeah, I mean, really, the only kind of topic I even had half in my mind was the posing, and we already really covered that. So we'll see, because certain things, like obviously the fact that this arm isn't visible, won't be made particularly obvious, or it won't. I think it might actually be concealed a little bit by the way the shading goes in. So we'll see how that works. The shading might conceal some of our little foibles here, because it does, like, it is sort of alien that you can't see the arm at all, but I think we're getting away with it. I think it looks all right. Again, it is a little weird that it's not even remotely visible, but we'll see how that sort of feels as we're going. I mean, I'm not going to add it now, but you know, it might just sort of seem a little less alien as some of the coloring and stuff like that goes in. Some of the sort of paints and stuff like that fill out some of the areas. But yeah. Anyways, I'm going to do these colors, and then I'll be back to do the painted shading. Yeah. Alright, that's our colors done. and yep, I decided to... I changed my mind a couple of times on what kind of purples I wanted to use. So for the primary sort of light purple, I initially had a different color for the mask. I originally was using, I mean you even saw it, I was using the dark purple for that, but it just didn't look quite right, especially with the light purple. I felt like the light purple should definitely cover a bit more area, and the only way to have it do that is to have it also be the mask, because there's not really much more area it can cover otherwise. But yeah, mostly this is pretty dark in terms of colors, so the painted shading will sort of lighten this up a little bit. We'll see how it works. This might wind up being only a little bit lighter, but I think this is overall going to be quite dark in terms of how a lot of this comes out. So we'll see. Anyways, I'll do this painted shading and then I will move on. Yeah. Alright, so that is our painted shading done. Now it's time for the detailed shading and the light line and the first gradient map. And then it'll be time to wrap up after that. So again, I didn't do anything too crazy. I just stuck with a fairly simple color palette, which again will obviously be the color palette that I will stick with throughout the rest of this, of where it will be two different shades of purple. One which is leaning a bit more pink. On the screen down here it looks a little bit more purple than it does up here. Up here it's definitely pink, but down here it's a lot more purple. But yeah, so we've got those two shades. That's sort of what we're sticking with. Everything is going to be fairly monotone to a degree. With the gradient map on, it'll sort of skew a bit more monotone with the just various different shades of purple for the most part. But I mean, that's sort of what we're dealing with in the first place here, anyways. So yeah, I mean, there's not much I really need to cover here. Like for the most part, we're basically done. This is pretty easy so far. It's just a little bit of flair to what is otherwise a very simple sort of drawing. But anyway, I suppose I'll cover a bit more of that whenever I'm wrapping up. So yeah, anyways, I will do this last section and then I'll be back to wrap up. So yeah. Alright, that is pretty much everything done. So yeah, that's the light line, that's the detailed shading, and of course the first gradient map. So, as you can see, the gradient is pretty simple. It is just our sort of pinky color all the way down to a bluey purple. So it's pretty simple, and that's just the general color grade we're going for. Nothing too crazy, it's just shades of purple. Just on that sort of same level. So I'll make my duplicates because that will take like a minute to do. So this will dull things. So I think we want it to be over everything because that doesn't make it too dull, but we want this to be pretty subtle. I'd say 15% is probably fine. Now color burn. We're going to want that to be over everything, and we're going to want that to be 10%. So that's that. Now time to grab the texture. That should be it then. So yeah, as I was saying before, really the sort of emerging topic, I suppose, of this one is sort of keeping things simple. Sometimes doing something visually simple can be effective in its own right. You don't need to always have a bunch of different sort of crazy different little things happening. You don't need to have a bunch of moving parts, a bunch of extra little bits going on at all times in the background. You can sometimes just let it be really simple. And in those cases, something simple can wind up looking just as good, if not better, than something more complicated. Again, as I say, it doesn't always need to have a bunch of different moving parts, a bunch of different sort of bits of fabric flying in every direction. Again, we do have that here technically with the cape flying back, but you don't always need to have some sort of, like, again, crazy different pose. You don't need to always have like each different limb doing something crazy different, even though that is a thing which I do sometimes say to keep things more interesting for yourself, is to have each different limb doing something different. That is sometimes the thing I do say is to keep things interesting for yourself, is to keep a different limb doing something different each time, because that makes it more interesting to draw. Generally, makes it more interesting to draw. There's more going on there for you on a visual level, so that whenever you're drawing it, it doesn't get boring for you. But whenever it comes down to just on terms of like a viewing level, just on looking at it, you don't always need to have a bunch of different stuff going on, because that can just complicate things in terms of actually looking at it, and preserving the visual simplicity of it can sometimes be better than it being fun to draw. Generally speaking, I wouldn't say that you should compromise the fun of drawing the thing just for the sake of it being simpler or more readable, but it should absolutely be readable. And here I mean the pose is very readable because there's not much going on with the pose. The pose is very simple. And so, yeah, generally speaking, keep it simple. If you don't need it to be crazy complicated, keep it simple. And so that's what this is. This one's pretty simple. Nothing too crazy going on with it. It's just, this is it, as is. But yeah, I don't think I need to talk much more about anything else. I'm content with that being our little wraparound on this one. I'm happy with this. This was simple, easy enough. Didn't take amazingly long. It still took the full 4 hours to record. But, you know, this is such as life. Anyways, I will say my outro and then I will leave you, I think. Because, yeah, I'm content to leave it there. I'm happy with this one, and that's that. So, yeah. If you like the video, do whatever you normally do, whether that be liking it or not. I would, of course, prefer if you liked it, but I can't make you do that, so just, you know, do as you normally would. It's the same deal if you want to subscribe, go for it. I can't, not that I would stop you, but I can't stop you from doing it. And yeah, you know where the subscribe button is. You've presumably watched a YouTube video before, so, you know, it's below the video, but, you know, you knew that already. And if you have a suggestion for what you'd like to see me draw in the future, you could leave a comment, politely worded. And yeah, if you choose to watch the next one, I will see you next time. So, with all that said, there's us. I'll say goodbye and I will leave you. So,